Assassin's Creed Liberation HD. It's a game you probably haven't thought about in a long time, let's be honest. But it's in the news right now, because a few days ago the game's Steam page displayed a warning telling users that this title would be delisted from the storefront. That's kinda weird. Generally, single-player games are only delisted due to licensing agreements, and as far as I can tell, this game doesn't rely on licensed music or the likeness of mass-produced cars. More concerning, though, was how this announcement was phrased. The exact wording was, "This game will not be accessible following September 1st, 2022. And the way that sounds is that this game will not be playable after that point, even if you bought it. And that would be a bad thing. A very bad thing. Making this situation worse was the fact that a few days prior, the game was on sale for the Steam Summerfest. What it started to look like was that Ubisoft was trying to goat people into buying this game that was on sale right before it got delisted, in hope those angry customers would shell out for the more expensive Assassin's Creed III remaster, that also included Liberation HD. Oof. This didn't come out of nowhere. It was hot off the heels of Ubisoft announcing that online services would be shutting down for several of its PS3, Xbox 360 era titles. Now, people got pretty upset, and rightfully so. Ubisoft responded with a statement that Liberation HD and the other games on the list of titles losing online support would not be made inaccessible for those who already purchased it. They could still play the games after September 2022. It was a misunderstanding, according to them. But then, they also clarified that for a lot of these games, any DLC would be removed from the store and made unplayable, even if you already bought it. Oh, Ubisoft, you silly, stupid son of a... Some speculated that Ubisoft's reactionary response to the backlash was something of a PR reversal, that they fully intended on delisting the games, making these titles unplayable even if you bought it. It was only after the heat of the moment, the internet enraged, that they reversed this decision, but only partially. Now, knowing what we know about Ubisoft, its corporate policies, and the fact it really loves that money, I wouldn't doubt for a second that this was the case. In fact, I believe it. This DLC removal seems restricted only to the PC versions of the game, which is weird. But I think I have a theory on why this is all happening. Ubisoft is one of those especially awful companies that require internet connection to Ubisoft servers on PC to play the games. If you buy a Ubisoft game on Steam, you're gonna have to jump through some hoops to play it. You can't really just boot up these games. You gotta make sure you've installed that Ubisoft launcher for some reason. You have to sign up with the Ubisoft account and sign the Ubisoft EULA agreement. A lot of things you generally don't have to do on Steam unless you're playing a Ubisoft or EA or Activision game. I mean, they all have some form of this, but, you know, they're the garbage companies. Garbage! I think that Ubisoft wanted to shut down all these games' online functionality, but in the process realized that it would make all of these games unplayable. It's possible that these games rely on Ubisoft servers for that initial activation, DRM, and EULA agreements, and they didn't want to spend the money to keep those servers active. In this case, you would ask, why not just delist the games, but let people who own the titles continue playing? Well, I think it's because they would have to reconnect to Ubisoft's antiquated servers for that EULA if they ever started a new file over. After all this backlash, they decided, okay, we'll maintain that basic functionality to play the game, but we're still going to shut down Uplay and the other online elements that manage DRM for DLC. It's just a theory, but it's the only way any of this makes sense to me. I mean, think about how DLC works on other platforms for non-Ubisoft games. Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, they generally host the content on their storefront. There's no additional cost to the publisher after the fact unless they rely on their own servers to verify its authenticity. Because usually, even a game that's considered outdated and hasn't gotten updates for years doesn't get its DLC removed. I mean, you can still buy the MW2 stimulus package if you really want. If true, it's kind of a fitting end for these titles, destroyed by Uplay and Ubisoft's greed and lack of foresight. I mean, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but regardless, it really has brought to light how impermanent modern gaming is. No longer are online-only titles the ones that disappear. Nothing is safe. Remember when Blizzard's Warcraft III Reforged released as a remastered version of the original title? It was garbage. It had new bugs, new issues the original game didn't suffer from. And remember how it replaced the original game, erasing it from the face of the earth? Yeah, we're living in a time when games can really just disappear from your machine. And that's scary. It's brought up a few conversational points of the whole digital versus physical debate, and I've talked about this before on another channel, but the sad reality of the situation is that physical media doesn't always solve these problems. Now, first off, on PC, physical media is gone. Modern PCs don't have disk drives, and while you could buy an external drive, almost no new PC titles are released on disk. And if they are, well, it's usually just a box with a code, or the disc just has part of the game. So in this case, it doesn't really matter. It's just a non-option on this platform. On consoles, physical media is also not a perfect solution to these issues. Not anymore, at least. Games aren't played off the disc on a modern console. They're installed to the hard drive or SSD. The Blu-ray is nothing more than a key after that point. It allows the console to verify that you own the game. While discs can still offer benefits, like you get to keep it if you lose your account, it's not really the same level of ownership that it was, say, 20 years ago. Under the terms of service that you agree to when using these devices, publishers could legally just remove access to any title you own, even if you still have the disc. I mean, an update could go out tomorrow making all copies of Ratchet & Clank or Halo unplayable on PS5 or Xbox Series X using the disc. I guess we could also bring up disc rot if you really wanted to go that far, but I'm not going to go there today. When it comes to DLC, the physical media aspect doesn't really matter that much. Like, it's downloadable content, not on disc, and in the cases of a definitive edition or a re-release, this can include that content, but it's still a non-option for PC, and a lot of games don't get those definitive editions. So, if not physical media, what's the solution? Well, I guess you could say DRM-free PC games? I guess that could bypass all this, but other than that, maybe console games made before 2005? Yeah, that's the state of modern gaming for you. The worst part about all of this is that the issue isn't going away. Like, Ubisoft didn't learn its lesson from before. Even now, Ubisoft games on Steam still require you to have a Ubisoft account to connect to whatever Ubisoft platform they still use today. They haven't changed, and eventually, all of these games, every Ubisoft title on PC, will probably be unplayable, even if you paid for them. For these particular titles, they'll probably wait a few more years and then remove all support, because they don't want to keep the servers up. At least if my theory's right. Still, the sheer gall of Ubisoft to even remove paid DLC from people's games in the first place is bad enough. But then, to follow it up with the statement on how they care about legacy titles is just par for the course. Here's hoping all that lost DLC gets preserved on PC, which I'm sure it will, but yeah, it's kind of an unfun situation all around, ain't it? I wanted to end this on a happier note, so, I guess here's a picture of Ubisoft's share value. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling better already.